You won't believe this story, but let me tell you, it's one of the most heart-wrenching and inspiring tales of resilience you've never heard. The world is mourning the loss of Alice Ann Ridley, the hidden legend who was the mother of Oscar-nominated actress Gabourey Sidibe. Alice passed away at the age of 72, and while her death has left a deep sadness, the true heartbreak comes from what most people never knew about her: the funeral tributes, the unexpected legacy she left behind, and the way her life quietly changed the world are things most never imagined. Alice wasn't just Gabby's mom. She was a powerful, soulful singer whose story will move you in ways you didn't expect. This is a story that begins far from the glamour of Hollywood and the spotlight. It began in Georgia, in a world that didn't offer many opportunities for Black women, especially those with dreams as big as Alice's. But even as a little girl, she had one thing no one could deny: her voice. A voice that could stop you in your tracks. It wasn't just any voice, it was a gospel-rooted, soul-stirring powerhouse that could make you feel everything she was singing. Alice's dream of making it big in the music world wasn't about fame. It was about finding a way to survive and share her gift with others. But here's the shocking part. Alice moved to New York City hoping for a break, but instead of being welcomed by big stages, she found herself singing in subway stations. The subway for most people was just a means of getting from one place to another. But for Alice, it became her stage. She would belt out gospel and soul tunes for crowds of tired commuters. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. To many, it looked like struggle, but to Alice, it was survival. It was purpose. She never let the harshness of life defeat her. What made Alice different was that she never let the world change her. Even in the underground tunnels of New York, where the world didn't care about who you were or what you had to offer, Alice remained true to herself. Her performances weren't just entertainment, they were ministry, they were healing. People who heard her sing said it was like being in church. There was power in her voice, and it touched everyone who had the privilege of hearing her. She wasn't chasing fame, she was chasing something deeper. She was giving something the world didn't even know it needed. But what makes this story different from others like it? Alice wasn't just a talented singer. She was also a mother, raising her children as a single parent. Life wasn't easy and money was tight, but Alice's belief in herself and her children never wavered. She showed Gabourey the power of perseverance. Gabourey had seen her mother sing to survive, and though it wasn't easy, Alice never showed weakness. She was the rock in Gabourey's life, teaching her the real meaning of strength. It wasn't just about getting by, it was about staying true to yourself, no matter what the world threw at you. But this is where it gets really interesting. After years of singing in subway stations, Alice's big break came in the most unexpected way. You won't believe it, but it had everything to do with her daughter, Gabourey Sidibe. In 2009, Gabourey skyrocketed to fame for her Oscar-nominated role in Precious. As Gabby's fame grew, so did the spotlight on her family. People began to ask where Gabby's incredible talent came from, and that's when the world learned about Alice. But what stunned everyone wasn't just that Gabby came from humble beginnings. It was that Alice was a star in her own right. And that's when the story took its first twist. In 2010, Alice stepped onto the stage of America's Got Talent, a 58-year-old woman who had spent decades singing in subway stations, and she told the judges she'd been performing underground for over 20 years. What happened next was nothing short of magical. Alice sang at last by Etta James, and the room went silent. The judges were speechless. The audience went wild. Alice's raw, soul-stirring voice shook the very foundations of that stage. And the craziest part? She made it all the way to the semifinals. Just like that, Alice wasn't just Gabby's mother. She was Alice Ann Ridley, soul singer. For the first time, the world could see her talent, and it was undeniable. But there's something many people miss during that rise to fame. Alice didn't want to be famous. She didn't want to be a part of the Hollywood machine. Fame came knocking on her door, but Alice's roots remained grounded in faith, perseverance, and authenticity. Even as she gained exposure, her love for singing and her mission to stay true to herself never wavered. She wasn't just another contestant on a reality show. She was a woman who had lived a life full of struggle and survival. And now, she was showing the world what real talent looked like. As the world mourned the loss of Alice Ann Ridley, the tributes that poured in were nothing short of extraordinary. Fans, fellow artists, and even strangers who had once heard her sing in the subway all had stories to share. Gospel legends, subway buskers, and even commuters who had witnessed her raw talent remembered her with love and admiration. It wasn't just her voice that people remembered, it was her spirit, her unshakable belief in herself, and her ability to lift others up, no matter the circumstances. The tributes were a testament to a woman who never gave up, who never allowed the world to change her. And even in death, Alice's legacy was bigger than anyone could have imagined. At her funeral, the room was filled with emotion. People spoke about her not just as a singer, but as a mother, a friend, and a legend who had shaped their lives. The choir sang with tears in their eyes, and friends and family shared heartfelt memories of a woman who had given so much to the world. But there was one moment that no one saw coming. One moment that changed everything. After the funeral, when the crowds had dispersed and the media cameras had stopped rolling, something private and deeply personal happened. It was during a family gathering, away from the spotlight, that Gabourey did something that left everyone in the room stunned. Gabourey stood up, trembling, holding a letter in her hands. This wasn't just any letter. It was a letter written by her mother, Alice, before her death. The letter was for Gabourey, and it revealed something so powerful, so intimate, that it left everyone speechless. The letter was filled with love, pride, and regret. Alice wrote about the sacrifices she had made throughout her life, sacrifices that had affected Gabourey's childhood. It was a confession of sorts, a final message of truth that only her daughter could fully understand. In the letter, Alice expressed how proud she was of Gabourey, not just for her success, but for her strength in an industry that often tried to silence women like her. "I know now that I was hard on you," the letter reportedly said, "but it was only because the world was even harder. I didn't want it to break you, and it didn't. You became a star that shines brighter than I have." This was a heartfelt blessing, a passage filled with love, music, and legacy. Alice spoke about her hope that her music would live on, not through a contract or a record deal, but through the stories people shared and the lives she had touched. This wasn't just a goodbye. It was a final message of truth, a wish that her legacy would continue to inspire others. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. After reading the letter, Gabourey did something that no one could have predicted. She announced that she was going to produce a documentary about her mother's life, a film dedicated to her music, her struggle, and her unwavering authenticity. The documentary, tentatively titled Subway to Soul, would chronicle Alice's journey from performing in subway stations to achieving viral fame on America's Got Talent, and the quiet, strong matriarch behind one of Hollywood's most authentic stars. Now, you might think that would be the end of Alice Ann Ridley's story, but this is where it gets even more interesting. Out of nowhere, a man named Marcus Bell stepped forward. He claimed to be a former producer who had worked with Alice in the 1980s, long before her subway performances or her fame on America's Got Talent. According to Marcus, Alice had entrusted him with a collection of unreleased demo tapes, raw, soul-stirring tracks that had never seen the light of day. These weren't just home recordings. They were full studio sessions, powerful songs about survival, faith, and the pain Alice had endured while raising Gabourey as a single mother. But why had Alice kept these tapes hidden for so long? Marcus revealed that Alice had been offered a major record deal years ago, one that could have made her a household name, but she turned it down. Why? Because the record executives told her that her voice was gold, but her image wasn't marketable. They wanted her to change everything about herself, her weight, her look, even her name. Alice, who had never compromised her authenticity, walked away from that deal. She chose integrity over fame, and that decision led her to sing in the subway instead of on the world stage. But here's the craziest part. Marcus said that Alice made him promise not to release the tapes while she was alive. And now, after her death, he felt it was time to share her true voice with the world. Gabourey, of course, was conflicted. On one hand, these tapes were a piece of her mother's soul that she never knew existed. On the other hand, releasing them might go against her mother's final wishes. Gabourey listened to the tracks privately, and according to insiders, she was overwhelmed with emotion. As the news of the unreleased tapes began to spread, so did the whirlwind of emotions that came with it. Gabourey's decision to release the music wasn't an easy one, but the powerful, raw quality of the songs left no doubt that Alice's voice was a gift that deserved to be heard. Fans, critics, and the music world at large were eager to experience what many had missed out on for decades. But with the anticipation came a deep underlying tension. Was Gabourey doing the right thing by sharing her mother's most personal music with the world? Was this truly what Alice would have wanted, or was this a step too far? Despite the doubts that lingered in her mind, Gabourey pushed forward with the documentary and the release of the tapes. Subway to Soul began to take shape, and the film's concept was strikingly powerful. It wasn't just about the music, it was about the journey Alice had taken, the sacrifices she had made, and the woman who had raised a star in the midst of unimaginable hardships. As the documentary moved through the production process, Gabourey's role became more than just that of a daughter looking to honor her mother's legacy. She was now in the difficult position of navigating the intersection of her own grief, the media's demands, and the complexities of uncovering a past that was so deeply intertwined with her own life. And then, as if fate had written another twist into the story, Marcus Bell, the man who had once worked with Alice in the 1980s, gave an exclusive interview. His revelations about the demo tapes weren't just shocking, they were eye-opening. Alice had kept these songs hidden for a reason, he said. She had been a woman who understood the price of fame all too well, and her decision to avoid the spotlight had not been a simple choice. It was a matter of survival. When Alice had been offered that life-changing record deal all those years ago, she was told she needed to change everything about herself, from her appearance to her name. The pressure to conform had been unbearable, but Alice, ever the defiant soul, had walked away. In the interview, Marcus revealed more about Alice's character. Despite all the doors that had closed on her, she had never let bitterness define her. Instead of turning her back on music altogether, Alice had found a way to keep singing, to keep sharing her soul with the world in the most unorthodox way possible, performing in subway stations. What people didn't know, however, was how much this decision had cost her. The rejection from the music industry was just the tip of the iceberg. Alice had to make a choice, compromise her values, or continue living life on her own terms. And while her path had led her underground, it had never dimmed her light. Her music, raw and unfiltered, had always been a reflection of who she truly was. Now, you might think the story was over, that Alice's decision to step away from fame would be the final chapter in her life. But here's where it gets even more unexpected. As the documentary began to take shape, new details started to emerge, some of which had been buried for years. Gabourey, who had always been incredibly close to her mother, began to uncover the depths of Alice's struggles that she had never fully understood as a child. Gabourey had been raised with love and strength, but what she didn't realize until much later was the personal toll Alice's decisions had taken. The hardships Alice had faced in the pursuit of survival were far more complicated than Gabourey had ever known. For instance, while Gabourey had been making her own way in Hollywood, rising to fame with her Oscar-nominated role in Precious, Alice had been living a quieter life. But that didn't mean she wasn't struggling. It didn't mean she wasn't carrying the weight of her choices, her regrets, and her sacrifices. Gabourey came to realize that Alice had always been determined to protect her from the harsh realities of their world. Alice had fought to shield her daughter from the pain that she herself had endured. But as the documentary began to shed light on Alice's true story, Gabourey found herself grappling with a deeper truth, one that made her see her mother in a completely new light. But here's the twist. Just when the world thought they knew Alice's story, a new revelation came to light. It wasn't just about Alice's struggle with the music industry or the difficult choices she had made. It wasn't just about the demo tapes or the documentary. A woman who had spent years performing in subway stations, a woman who had been overlooked by the mainstream music industry, was now becoming the focal point of a much larger conversation about authenticity, fame, and survival. As Gabourey continued to navigate the storm of emotions, public scrutiny, and the complexities of her mother's legacy, the unexpected happened. Just when it seemed like the pieces of Alice Ann Ridley's life were finally falling into place, a man named Marcus Bell stepped forward with a bombshell revelation that turned everything on its head. Marcus, who claimed to have been a close confidant of Alice in the 1980s, came forward with a story that no one saw coming. He claimed that Alice had trusted him with a treasure trove of unreleased demo tapes, tracks that had never been heard by the public. These weren't just any tapes. These were full studio sessions, raw and deeply emotional songs that captured the essence of Alice's soul in ways that her subway performances couldn't. For years, these tracks had remained hidden, locked away, as Alice had made a conscious decision not to release them. But why? Why would someone with such a powerful voice, someone with the potential to become a household name, choose to keep their music a secret? According to Marcus, the answer lay in a decision Alice had made long before the subway performances, long before her brief stint on America's Got Talent. Alice had been offered a major record deal back in the 1980s, an opportunity that could have catapulted her to international fame. But the catch was clear. In order to sign the deal, Alice would have had to change everything about herself. The record executives reportedly told her that her voice was gold, but her image wasn't marketable. They wanted her to lose weight, change her appearance, and even change her name. But Alice, as strong-willed as ever, refused to compromise. She walked away from the deal, turning down the fame and fortune that so many artists would have begged for. Instead of conforming to an industry that demanded she sacrifice her true identity, she chose to stay true to herself. Her decision wasn't just about rejecting fame. It was about integrity. It was about holding on to the things that mattered to her most, her music, her voice, and her authenticity. But that's not where the story ends. Marcus Bell's revelation about the tapes didn't just shed light on Alice's past, it raised even more questions. If Alice had chosen to keep these tapes hidden for so long, why did Marcus feel it was time to release them now, after her passing? And what did Gabourey think about all this? How would she respond to the sudden exposure of her mother's deepest, most personal work? When Gabourey first heard about the tapes, it wasn't just the revelation of the music that shook her. It was the realization that her mother had lived a life full of unseen sacrifices, decisions, and untold stories. Gabourey knew her mother's strength, her resilience, her incredible ability to perform in the toughest of circumstances. But even she didn't fully understand the weight of Alice's choices until now. These tapes were a glimpse into a part of Alice's life that Gabourey had never seen, moments that were raw, unfiltered, and deeply personal. As Gabourey listened to the tracks, it became clear that her mother's music wasn't just a reflection of her talent, it was a reflection of her struggles, her heartbreak, and her unwavering determination. The songs, full of soul and power, revealed the depths of Alice's soul in ways that no one had ever heard before. Each track told a story of survival, of love, of pain, and of triumph. They were a testament to a woman who had lived through hardship but never allowed it to define her. They were a reminder that true strength doesn't come from fame or fortune. It comes from staying true to who you are, no matter the cost. But Gabourey found herself torn. Was it right to release the music? Was it a betrayal of her mother's wishes to share these deeply personal tracks with the world? She had always known her mother as a woman who preferred to remain out of the spotlight, someone who had chosen authenticity over fame. Yet, at the same time, Gabourey knew that these songs had the power to inspire, to heal, and to touch the lives of people who had never even heard of Alice Ann Ridley. In the end, Gabourey made the difficult decision to honor her mother's legacy by sharing her music with the world. The documentary Subway to Soul became more than just a film about Alice's life. It became a tribute to the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter, a bond that had been forged through years of love, struggle, and sacrifice. Gabourey poured her heart into the project, determined to tell her mother's story in the most authentic way possible. The release of Alice's music was met with widespread acclaim. Fans who had never heard of her before were blown away by the depth and power of her voice. They marveled at the soul-stirring lyrics, at the raw emotion that poured from every note. For many, it was as if a piece of history had been resurrected, an untold story of an artist who had been silenced for far too long.